Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. This is Strange Mosaic, and this is a little bit different episode than I normally do. This one is going to be designed just for only public view on YouTube. And I have my good friend, Elisa E, who I've done probably 30 plus shows with now, lots of them public. We have a huge library now of private content as well. But the nature of our connection and bond has been, over the experience of MK Ultra and what exactly the many things that is are. And we've had ranging conversations over the years that have kind of gone into like every color on the spectrum of how that can be deployed, experienced, and overcome. But today she's here to talk about something that she's a part of that's designed to offer help to people who are struggling to understand and move beyond circumstances that have been challenging in their life that there isn't broad acceptance or help for. So Elisa, welcome back. And today I'm going to let you tell us what you're up to. I might ask some questions here or there, but it's going to be different than the typical sort of interview show. So welcome back. Always lovely to have you.
Thank you.
And,
yeah, thanks, Emily. It's always nice to see you. It's like just having a conversation with my friend Emily. I enjoy that. Well, what's been happening is I partnered with a radio host named Tim Ray, who I met. We'd known each other for like 10 years. I went on his show ages ago. We've just kind of kept in contact over the years. And earlier this year, spring, early summer, we decided that it was time to start a relief fund for not only MK Ultra survivors and SRA survivors, but also targeted individuals, the more modern version of MK Ultra. And by the way, just to throw this out there, everybody who has reached out, every survivor who's reached out thus far, even if they started, if they're in their 60s or 70s that started in MK Ultra, they are now under remote targeting as well. So, which is the same case with me. And so we can get into some of that. But the fund is, we created a website. We're doing what we call MK Ultra shows, which is, I'll give you all the links, which is on Tim's site where he does other shows. He has several different shows he does, and we've put a link there where we bring on survivors and they give testimony. And as we start to be able to accumulate funds through donations, which is really kind of where we're at now, needing that, we'll send to people a certain amount of money, depending on what we have. And then we invite them to come on the show, the MK Ultra show, and tell us, like what their story is, if they want to, or tell us what, if that helped their situation financially, and kind of encourage more donations that way, making it real, making it, not just something nebulous out there, but bringing people on who are challenged with these things. So I'll give you the website too. It's called unitedintentions.org. And you can go on there and it'll tell you all about us. There's a survivor page, there's several pages, links. There's a survivor page that has kind of the introduction for them of what, filling out the form and what we may be able to do for them. It has a list of practitioners, a very varied list, one of which is Emily Moyer, to assist them in their healing process and their understanding of, what's going on. And then we have a donation page, which tells a little bit more about us for those that are willing to help out. And I will tell you, we're kind of upside down now. We've been out, 2.5, 3 weeks online, and we have far more survivor requests for financial assistance than we do donations, which is probably—
as is usually the case, right?
Right. But we did get to send out our first check to the first person on the list today, which is really exciting for me. I've always wanted to do this. And this is a way too, for me personally, to pay back all the people like yourself, Emily, and others in my life who have supported me off and on along the path. It's been a an issue for me. Like, how do we repay this? And so this seems like a great way. And Tim and I, we both said that we wouldn't do this with anybody else. If it were, the two of us, we trust each other. He's a lot of integrity, a very good man, big heart, very big heart, and works very hard in a variety of shows and avenues. And this isn't the first foundation that he started through his United Media Network. So I'll send you all those links. And if people can pass them on, even if you can't give money, if you know people who can, pass it on, pass that information on to them. We just need to get it kind of kick-started with some funds so that we can start keeping up with, the survivors that are reaching out. So what they do is they fill out a little form, first name, last name, so that when we can send them a check, we have that information. The next one is their email address, so that once they're approved, I can reach out for a valid mailing address. And then there's a little box that says, in 500 words or less, tell us something about yourself, your situation. And of course, it's always devastating what everybody's going through. Most people nowadays are either homeless or on their way out of their place because they can't afford it anymore. I mean, seriously, a couple of them don't even have an address to send a check to. So I've encouraged them to try to find someone that's safe, that they may be able to and get back to us. Some of them have trust issues. I've had 2 people now that don't trust when I ask for the address. And I try to explain to them that, I'll interact with you. I don't need to know where you are. But if I have to mail you a check, I will have to have somebody's address. And just to throw this out so that some survivors know this, one woman has her address protected. She's back east. And that's because of the situation she's in. No one is allowed to access her physical address. So she has a PO box. So we don't care, we don't need to know where you are. We just need a valid address to send it to you. We're not trying to accumulate your information. So I want to put that out there because there have been a couple of people that voiced to me, and I totally understand. I was so skeptical of everyone when I first started. I didn't trust anybody. Even the guy that was helping me for a year and a half, every once in a while I'd call him and just light into him, about who he was and what he was doing. And none of it was true. It was just, I was raised and traumatized enough that I didn't trust anybody. So I completely understand when people, come back at me and say, well, why do you need my address? Why do I need to be a part of this program and you need my address? So I try to explain to them and I give them an interaction. Once they send the form in, I interact with everybody as soon as I see that they've reached out. And sometimes people don't want funding. They just want to interact a little bit. And we both know how that is because, I remember, it took me, when I was really waking up, it took me 15, 20 years to find somebody who actually knew what I was talking about. People don't trust it. They don't believe you. And it's really been amazing for me in my heart because the first interaction, the form is, just devastating, right? This is my situation. And then when I reach out and converse and they come back, I can feel a sense of a relief, even in their email back to me, that the energy completely shifts from that initial, horror story, whatever it may be of what they're involved in. So yeah, that's the start of it. And like I said, that's unitedintentions.org. And then there's uimedianetwork.com is where the MK Ultra shows can be found. And I will supply you with those links.
So a couple of things just to, sort of remark on what you just said. It is kind of a quandary, and it's not the only area where you find something like this, but there's only really 1 or 2 others that I can think of where it's like an ever-present scenario where it's like, okay, you're trying to do something to help people. You need to vet a little bit on your side, right? Because, sure, anybody can just be like, whatever happened, give me money or something like that. But then once you've vetted, then there's this weird thing on the other side where now it's shifted and they don't know if they trust you. The only other thing I can think of that's really like this is like when you're getting into dealing with like informants or drug dealers or whatever it is, where it's like the distrust, both people have to engage a little bit in this trust and verify, right, kind of thing. And it's challenging, right? Like I think that for anyone who's been either traumatized or has information or a story that seems implausible, right? Like there's a huge barrier to either getting help or to like knowing who to tell to try and make it stop if you're talking about something that's happening to someone else and not you. And all of this maneuvering that has to be done before one human being feels secure in communication with another human being is kind of like a terrifying sign of about our times on one level, but also is kind of one needs to start developing a secondary set of skills that really helps you understand the difference between information gleaned in interactions that tells you you should trust someone versus what tells you like you like this person, right? Because sometimes they're not, a lot of times people are so in desire, especially when they're maybe needing help or they've had trouble finding someone to share their story with who will take them seriously. There is a desire to have your viewpoint validated, right? Or something like that. And sometimes that opens the door for someone coming in who you shouldn't actually trust, right? So learning trust versus you have to be likable enough that a person wants to talk to you, right? But also like one of the things, and I'll just, because you kind of referred to it, you were a person that I, communicated quite a bit with, at a certain stage of my coming into the awareness of some, issues about my life. Right. And, we had to learn to trust each other. Right. And sometimes some of the things you said to me, I didn't like. Sometimes now some of the things you say to me, I don't like. Right. But you're always exactly who you are. Right. And over time that you say things that I don't like and that we sort of sort that out, right, is why I trust you. You know what I mean? And sure, it's like always lovely when we tell fantastic stories and people like clap or applaud or like egg us on to keep going with them and stuff like that. But that also leans into an area where a lot of things that aren't true and aren't authentic, right, can start to be highlighted, even if they're not completely lies or something like that. But when somebody gets a lot of validation or attention for particular parts of their sort of story or narrative about themselves, it whether they intend to or not, it encourages you to like really, really highlight or exaggerate or fill out those parts of your story more than the humdum, boring day-to-day parts of it. And a person you can trust is a person that you can trust is going to, not do that. A person that you can trust.
It sounds like you're talking about ego is what you're talking about. You're talking about, the tendency if you go public or you become a public figure in any form that the ego takes over. This is super common. And one of the ways I'm very aware of that, I've been aware of that from the beginning. And one of the ways I combat that for me personally is I get very focused before a show. And I have a very specific prayer about nothing coming out that isn't valid, that doesn't help this cause, that this isn't about me.
Yeah.
That's the other part. This isn't about me, but I get what you're talking about. And to me, that's ego, is that people can run off into something else. And it could be destructive, not only to their reputation, but to the cause itself. And trust issues for me with people in mind control programs, it's totally valid. And what I'm finding is it depends where somebody is. I mean, early on, I had all of them. And I noticed in the interactions on the website that I can tell where someone's at. And the majority of the people have come through. The ones that ask for funding, they have no resistance whatsoever. And it depends on what space they've reached, and maybe some of them are a little older than the younger ones that are, just figuring this out. So I get that it's very valid. One of the things that's really important to me, and I talked to Tim extensively about this, is that we don't push anybody. I'm not trying to bring somebody on. This is up to the person. I figure it this way. Every individual victim, survivor, knows their situation better than I do, because we know there's a variety. And it may actually be dangerous for them. They need to decide this. And like one of the things we do, we want to ask them on the show if they're willing, but it's not required to get funding. But they need to determine whether that's something they can safely do by going public, or even giving me their address, posting that online. So I don't push anybody with anything. I tell them I respect their decision. If they change their mind, reach out to me and let me know, if it feels comfortable down the road. But it's really important. I know this is really important for survivors. You don't come at a survivor. You never, never, never do that. You start coming at a survivor, you look like a handler. You look like a controller. You look like somebody who's has an agenda. And I learned that very early on in my own process, that then the main guy that worked with me for a year and a half, and all he was really, he was a support system because he had seen this before and worked with someone. He knew not to do that. He let me reach out all the time. He knew not to come at me. And so I learned that, leave them be, let them make a decision. I don't know what's going on in their life, because there is such a spectrum of this. How deeply in they still are, how many people are overseeing them still, how much use they have, or if they're on the run, which a lot of people already that have reached out, several of them, they're on the run. They're trying to find a place where they feel safe. And so, yeah, the trust issue is a very big thing for me. And to me, the thing that really takes care of that is realizing that this isn't about me.
Yeah.
I'm sharing my experience to validate why I can talk about it, but this is way bigger than me, right? This goes into, and one of the things I say is, on the site in the video, is that this isn't somebody else's problem. This is affecting the entire society. This affects everybody, and they're coming for everybody with new technologies. I mean, we're already there. Whether someone knows it or not, we're already there. And so to me, this is a social problem. This is a societal problem. This isn't, well, somebody else will take care of it. We all have a role in this now. And that is going to increase as we go forward, that it is going to be, and I'm already seeing it. I'm seeing what I call the normal people who don't know anything about this telling me symptoms of mind control technologies, and they have no idea what it is. So we're moving into a whole new territory. And so this to me is humanity's responsibility. It's our responsibility to address it, but it's our responsibility that we got here, each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. So, and that includes me, that includes you, it includes all of us. We got here over a long period of time. So we can change it. That's the good news, is we let it happen in a way. We've been irresponsible and maybe apathetic, but we can change this. One of the things I think of, just a basic marketing technique, where there's no demand, there's no supply. And that applies even to this, where there's no acquiescing and apathy. When you stand up, then they're up against it. Those that are perpetrating this are up against it. But as long as we stay, apathetic, or thinking it doesn't have anything to do with me, that's changing. That's really changing.
Yeah. No, all good points. I wasn't referring to people like coming on the show or not coming on the show. Like when I was talking about that, sort of, once you've like sort of connected with people, that there's this trust game, like from the different sides. And that my point was really about, like, when you're finding someone that you can trust. Like that, building that trustful relationship doesn't always mean that you like everything that the person has to say, right? I mean, and one of the things that I've found, in my own experience, in myself, in people that I have tried to help, people I've tried to help and failed, people I've tried to help and succeeded a little bit, right? Is that there's, sometimes a person is looking for like validation like around something. And then if that is provided, then, sometimes in that moment, people think, oh, well, that makes the person trustworthy, rather than if someone tells you the truth, whether you like it or not. And what my point with you was, that was just that one of the things I appreciated about you, and why actually I feel comfortable having you on to talk about this, and feel good that you're doing a project like this, even though you and I have in some ways very diverging viewpoints on things at this point, is even when I disagree with you, I trust you, because you're not ever just petting me and agreeing with everything that I say. You're not like picking certain points of my, story or what I think happened and saying, focus on these are very important, ignore the other things or whatever. You're listening to me. You're giving me your honest opinion. Sometimes you push back in a way that I'm like, well, I completely disagree, but I'm listening. I'm listening. And when I find myself in a circumstance that is playing out in a way that like I didn't expect or don't feel that I have the internal tools for, I remember what you said about these circumstances, and I go, okay, I have other resources to draw on here that wouldn't be my first instinct to go to, but I listened to everything she said. So if this situation goes this way, right, I know what to do, and maybe there's more validity to it. And that's happened a number of times, right?
Wow.
And so I'm one of these people that like, I need a lot of freedom to explore. I'm a curious person, and I need to make my own mistakes, but I also pay attention to everything that's happening, and, will quickly find in the tool bag the tool that I'd never thought I'd have to use, but for some reason kept anyway, and remember how I was taught to use it. And do that. And I'm not a person who's going to avoid situations, like I'll walk right up into a crazy situation, but I have tools that were given to me by someone who I disagreed with at the moment that they gave them to me, but they're there when I need them. And in a lot of ways, that is more valuable than constant reaffirmation about, your position on things, or the validity of this aspect of your story or not this aspect, or whatever it is. And I think that's sort of the broad thing here, right? Like, I think it's fine people go on your show or don't go on your show and share their experience. And at this point, there's such a wide spectrum of weird experiences people can have. And I see how, like, when someone is still in that very traumatized or the thick of their story or experience, something that's really different than that, they're inclined to go, no, that's not anything like this, or that's not the real thing. My version of it is the real thing. But like over time, like you can see that like trauma, manipulation, like, living in a completely imbalanced environment can play out in many, many, many different ways. And what we're really talking about here is like people having experiences that they're struggling to get their mind and their mind around, and their physiology over to a certain extent, right? Because trauma has psychological effects and energetic effects and physiological effects, and you can't just do one part of it. Like, it's a whole sort of rearranging of everything about yourself around the circumstances that have affected you to be able to sort of move past it, right? And in that experience, because everyone's experience is going to be so different, the most important thing is to have, a support system that you can trust, even when you don't like them, even when you don't agree with them. When I say don't like them, I don't mean like overall, I don't like you, or that's not what I mean. But at moments you say things that I don't like, right? But, and even though that can sting sometimes the first time that happens, after a while, that becomes why I trust you. I don't ever have to worry that you're going to blow smoke up my ass, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, well said. And it is a process. And you're right, you know, the trauma, I think back to the early days and how much what I had been through influenced what I thought about everything in the moment. And that's coming to pass for me now in that I actually had some experiences and some visionary experiences. I don't consider myself psychic or, you know, I don't get into all that language, but moments of random experiences over my life because of what they did to me. It was part of what they did to me. And all I could do was view, and I'm thinking of a couple in particular at the time, all I could do was view them as something coming from the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've discovered now as I've moved along my path, and of course, as you know, I'm a student of anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner. A couple of things have come up, and it's like, oh my God, that wasn't from the dark side. That was from, you know, that was an infusion in that moment being brought to me by something very light and helpful to help keep me going. And it had, even in one case, I'm still learning what that message was
Mm-hmm.
as I move forward in my studies. So, yes, you know, early on, just know that everything is tainted in this. If you've lived this life of mind control, everything is tainted by the dark in the early days, so that you're, you know, it's, I always talk about the moment when my head raised above the veil, so to speak, where I could start to think for myself. Thinking is very important. Thinking is crucial. And it's, matter of fact, it's, this whole mind control is attempting to take thinking away from the human being. And I'm talking about actual genuine thoughts and critical thinking. So it's like you have to go through that process in whatever way you can find your way through it, until you are able to start to feel that you've, in my words, taking my soul forces back, which allows me to think properly, to be able to discern, to be able to observe without tremendous emotion or triggering or reaction. And that's really tricky early on for all of us, you know. But as time goes on, I've found that I feel an incredible sovereignty in, you know, and I still deal with remote technologies, not as much as God help some of these people. I mean, it's absolutely insane 24/7. But I know that I still have a relationship to AI. I'm obviously in an AI system, as I think pretty much all of us are now personally. But I want to share this piece because, you know, there's the old trauma-based mind control, and then there's the transition for many of us that have moved into remote technologies. And I believe remote technologies were being used on me as early as the late 70s, early 80s. I didn't understand that when my memories showed up. I didn't know why I was on my own and I was switching alters when I was out on task. I do believe it was remote technologies now, but regarding AI, I'm finding that most of the victims, not necessarily all the ones that have reached out because on the fund, because we haven't interacted that deeply, but people that I've gotten to know and interacted several times with, AI is a huge part of this now. In other words, they may have physical handlers, but most people are being run by systems, artificial intelligence systems. And these systems are huge. You know, it's not like AI is working on one person, it's many people. And I have this experience where every once in a while something goes off that I see in my head. It's something that always has happened over the years, but I can stop it now and instantly. And so here's a case where I believe that taking those soul forces back, getting into a sovereign state, however you go about that, that I now have a will that is, you know, that's what's taken away in mind control. The will is disengaged. Okay. And when you start to recover and heal, you have a will which is allowing you to not only think clearly, but to take action that's effective, not just wishing or hoping or whatever, or crying or praying, I mean, praying's good. I'm still a big advocate of prayer, but what happens is when this goes off and I immediately recognize it within a few seconds, I only have to think the word stop. I don't have to say it. I say it with authority and it shuts down instantly. It may try to start up again, but I do the same thing and then it's done. It's completely done. Now, there's probably other objectives there where AI is attempting to learn things and interact with people. But the fact is, my will can stop it. It will not continue to run. And I bring this out because I don't think I'm unique in that at all. But it's a process of learning this. This is a process of moving through your recovery, healing, and being able to engage that with authority. Because a lot of the technologies coming out that are going to expose all of us to this eventually down the road. And I personally believe we're all nodes in the system anyway already, whether you're being remotely attacked or not. So this is going to matter. To me, this is going to be, as we evolve forward, the difference between those that will be under and subject to this horrifically evil technology and those who will find a way to rise above it. Meaning, this is going to be a challenge for each individual in the human race, eventually. And this may be a long way down the road where it becomes to that scale, but we're already in these, it's already being designed where people's information and their bodily structure with a lot of the technologies are, you're a node in a system. So, and to me, this is the ultimate goal, is to take that human part out so that we can be run in the way that they want us to be run, just like the old MK Ultra. And to me, the reason we keep talking about MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control that started in the 40s and 50s is because it's the history that proves the rest of it. Okay, if we drop that right now, all the people who don't understand this, you start talking to them about remote technologies, they're going to go, huh? That's crazy. That sounds like something out of, the Twilight Zone. So the reason it's important to stick with the original stuff, for example, on the site, I put in a 7-page list of mind control patents. Anybody can click on it and it'll open up and you can read all of them. 7 pages with the years, what they do, who designed it. And this to me is the reason MK Ultra, as we know it in trauma-based mind control, needs to be brought forward into what has developed. Is that this is the reason that they told us this is what they're doing. This is what the patents are talking about. And these patents have evolved tremendously. I mean, these technologies, you and I have talked about it on some of our other shows, and the abilities of what they can do through a person are absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. So
no, I agree with that. I think, I can't remember if I said it on the recording or if we talked about this before we hit go about this reinforcement of what was sort of an arcane view on some level of mind control. I guess what I wasn't referring to was keeping, people like educated and aware and abreast of that history. What I was talking to like more to was that when I first started getting the sniff that something was funny with me, where the stories that I was hearing like promoted as this is what MK Ultra is, were very like, there was almost like a 1 or 2, 3 maybe profiles of what it would look like. And I still find that in terms of like awareness of MK Ultra has become much more mainstream now. They're still very focused on promoting those versions. I'm not talking about like the old trauma-based versus the new, more like remote or soft touch, or even more like in training and trancing, like people like it kind of thing. I'm not talking about that difference. I'm talking about like there was a period of time where, if everybody thought of it as like either monarch or super soldiers, right? Or something like that. Like if you had any past with any of these projects, it was either, you know, this sort of ritualized sexual kind of thing that turned into like a monarch type of persona, or some kind of like super soldier with extended abilities. And all of you would come from families that had some sort of like Aryan or Celtic blood crossed with Native American. And if it's not that, then you're just delusional, buddy, or whatever it was. And that is so far from the truth of what it is. Not saying that none of that exists, but that is like two versions of it, when there's this whole myriad. It's very, I mean, at this point, it's like hyper personalized. But even in earlier days that were still very dependent on, you know, trauma or shock and awe in order to create this scenario, there's a vast array of programs and experiments involving different kinds of people, you know, for different reasons and whatnot, that when the just one or two versions are sort of projected out there and promoted, it makes it hard for someone whose experiences are outside of the norm, but aren't one or two of those, to sort of find a place, find something to help them start to sort through their stuff, right? And that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, and let me interject, and without giving specifics, you were told by someone that you weren't.
Right.
Early on. That's powerful when someone comes at you and says, no, you're not. I mean, I can only imagine, you know, how that felt. I know we talked about it back when, you know, that someone said, no, you're not, because they had the category that you didn't fit into. So yeah, I totally agree. And I believe that's even expanded more now. You know, I mean, some of the stuff I hear from people is really truly mind blowing. You know, what different varied points of view of what's happening to them. Some of it's inexplicable by our current understanding of things, literally inexplicable. And I mean, I'm putting my mind into it. I've got a friend who's brilliant. We're working at trying to figure out from an esoteric and a technical side how this is happening, and we still can't tell you.
It's very complicated, right? Like it's like one of the things I've been using to help me to explain what I mean to people sometimes, or even to help me understand what I'm thinking, is like I have this one picture of this, it's like a piece of art. It's like an LED hypercube that you can see how what looks like a simple box when the lights are turned off, when the light is turned on, it's this endless dimensional array of compartments and rooms of colors and whatnot. And like each one of them has like, they're all like the effect is coming from one single junction, but the way it arrays and reflects off of one another creates like a different aspect from which to, or a different position from which to view whatever it is you think you're looking at, right? And each one in some way is compartmentalized from all of the other ones. And so there's something that they all can't see. And that is kind of what we're dealing with in terms of trying to understand. There's some things that are so peculiar, right? And it's like, you know, until you found what exactly is like the particle at the center of that particular array, it would all look like a chaos of confusing mumbo jumbo. Once you sort of understand what to center, what you're looking at around, then it becomes more coherent. And then there's a lot to learn still, right? But this is like a dizzying array of, for lack of a better word, stuff that one has to sort of take in and try to comprehend in order to even get in the neighborhood of understanding what's going on. And even when you think you understand, you're still like many, many steps from actually understanding, right? And it's very, and it's different for each person. Like we live in, like, no matter, even though you and I We know a lot of the same things. We probably listen to some of the same people. We've probably read some of the same books. We like some of the same things. We dislike some of the same things or whatever. If I were to go look at your YouTube feed or your RSS feed or whatever, there's no two people in the world, unless their technology has been cloned and given to one another, who's going to have the exact same feed. We all have different little things we like or perspectives we take in, even though, we're subscribed to 10 of the same shows, the other 15, 20, 30 are going to be different things. And that's reality is almost like a feed at this point. Right. So it's like, unless you are in the center point of it, there's going to be some sort of factor around that you're like, and what the fuck is that? That's like a strange aside, but it's here. How do I make sense of it? Right. So.
Well, and I discovered something several years ago. Somebody sent me a short video, which of course is no longer available. And it was just this woman who was showing her computer screen, and she had found her way into what's called an ASN number, and her own ASN number. That's automated network systems. So I paid attention to what she said. I went in and found mine, and it blew my mind. Okay, now the premise of this is that, or what I believe they're trying to promote with this is that this is all about your online interaction. No. It's way beyond that. Mm-hmm. What I found in mine was hundreds and hundreds of pages of people using me, DOD, all the military, all the private contractors, oodles of corporations that I named in my early days, but I couldn't tell you why I knew them. Mm-hmm. I knew them because they were working through my subtle bodies. Mm-hmm. Two of them. One was Oracle and one was Pfizer. Both were up in Salt Lake. They were in my list.
I'm sure I have an uncanny relationship with Oracle, so I completely understand what you're talking about. Yes.
I mean, I found SAIC, which was at the time was the new version of running MK Ultra through the military contractors. Everything was in there. Boeing, Raytheon, and then all these other corporations. And they had them listed as customers or peers. And I had to decipher what was going on by going through this list. And I wrote this huge email and sent it to the person that had sent me the video and said, this is way more than what I think you even think this is. But I couldn't quite grasp it. I couldn't quite figure out how are they using me. It's not just on a physical level. This isn't about my online information. These companies, these institutions are using me. They're using me in more of an esoteric way through the tech. And so I laid it all out, and it turns out I was pretty accurate when I was describing customer and peer. My guess was accurate, and it had everything to do with being in an AI system under peer. I said what that means by looking at the listing of who's peer means that I'm in a huge AI system and all these people are a peer in that system. But I couldn't explain how are they using me? How are they using my energy, my data, how is this happening? Because I know it's beyond the physical online information, surveillance shit. So recently, I don't know if you've seen her, but somebody sent me a video of Sabrina Wallace.
Right.
And blew my mind because she told me what this was, without her ever mentioning an ASN, although she did talk about automatic network system networks. But she even used the word in one video, peer, because it's related to networking. Peer, we are. And her information to me is crucial for what we are up against now and what this is going to evolve into. And this is totally a theory. It has nothing to do with what she claims. Okay. But what came off of this for me was I saw all the wires are going to disappear. All the hardware is going to disappear. And it's not just going to be routers and wireless. It's going to be us. We are going to be the data storage, the usage of energy. We're going to run it all. The human populace is going to be the node in the system that it will be flying through. And to me, that's what the ASN number and all these hundreds and hundreds of pages of people that are tapped into me. And the reason I have so many is because I'm MK Ultra, because I'm a mind control survivor. The woman that did the initial video didn't have a lot, but she wasn't a victim. So this to me, it just clarified. And I've only listened to 2 full videos of Sabrina, but man, she's on it. And she talks about the biofield, our subtle bodies. That's everything. It's key. She talks about it as a what does she call it? It's another body part. She keeps saying
the aura isn't like an organ; it's a part of your body, right?
Body part. So and when you listen to her, what she's saying fits to my personal experience. First of all, of how early some of these technologies started with me, and this whole ASN number that I discovered and have passed on to other people to look up theirs.
I think you can't anymore.
No.
Yeah, I know people who like have tried, like the site where you could do that is now gone, and yeah.
And what I did, thank God, is I put my link in there in the email, because I sent it to a trusted friend and I said, use this if it helps you, because she's a major researcher. And I said, use anything you want in this. So I can still go back to my page. And my page changed over the course of, I don't know how long it's been. I'm still terrible with chronology and tracking time, but it's been many, many months, if not a year. And my pages are different, but they're still up there. And there's still a lot of the same, DOD is all over it. So there's still a lot of the same things, but I've had friends now, I've tried to tell them how to get in there and they can't get to their number. So to me, that is also symptomatic of what this is really being used for. They don't want people to know, because everybody knows that their data is tracked online. So this is way beyond that. But we, through our biofield, this is what came to me, through our biofield, we are going to be that antenna, that router, that we're going to be a storage mechanism. I mean, there's tremendous technology, information out there about DNA and genetics being tremendous storage units, this whole nanoscale activity. But what's fascinating is, yes, we have nanotech in us. It's been dropped on all of us and it's coming in a variety of ways. But the biofield is what matters. That they've always, once they figured that out, anybody can be tapped, because we all have an aura. And it's several layers. The biofield is, it's not just the astral, it's the etheric, the astral, the I, which is called the ego with the big E, not the ego we talk about that we don't want to accentuate. So, I mean, to me, it's just opened a whole new version. And I even believe that this is part of what the secret space program is, because the Earth is being turned into a machine. It's completely covered all the way around in the atmosphere and ionosphere and, with technology. And to me, I still believe there is a valid version also of the secret space program with someone like Catherine Austin Fitts, that's a reality, the money and the eventual mining and so forth. But what I don't believe is some of the stories that are coming out about what victims are claiming, they're doing through the secret space program. To me, this is the real piece that may, and that's just my theory, I ran it by a friend of mine, may fit into this so-called secret space program, the fact that we're all already nodes in the system. I hope I haven't gone over any, we weren't supposed to do crazy stuff, but YouTube. I haven't said anything that
I think you're fine. No, we have to give people a flip. So if people like the deeper, broader, more, we get into some even way farther and crazier than that kind of stuff on lots of our other shows. It's totally fine. I just want to say a couple of things, like the Oracle and the SIAC thing, right? Like, just so, like, you know, I think I showed you on a previous episode of our private series my ongoing relationship and interaction with Oracle that is just like kind of fascinating.
Oh, you didn't.
Right.
You didn't, that I recall.
Okay. So I live right next door to Oracle right now.
You did.
I live right next door to Oracle right now in Austin. And I used to live in Tucson. And so I live next door to Oracle, the corporation, right? But when I lived in Tucson, I lived just above, near a road called Oracle and below an estates called Oracle, right?
I know what you're talking about.
It was in the exact same position geometrically, that the relationship is the same. And the name of the street is virtually the same that I live on, though it's in different areas, like Tucson and Austin, right? And where you are, like, but just like, you know, I'm not going to, I also can show you, like, I also lived in a previous time living in Austin, like I lived equidistant from SIAC that I live from Oracle now, right? So, and if I didn't know what SIAC was then, but when somebody mentioned SIAC was associated with a particular project or program that I had figured out long ago that I was associated with, I went and looked up SIAC.
And we're talking about SAIC?
SAIC, yeah. Okay, so when I went and looked up SIAC, I'm like, oh, well, shit, no, of course. I lived, like, somehow I got lured into living right down the street from SIAC.
They're good at that. They're good at that.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of like, first of all, I find that all of these highly technical, logical, high computerized AI types of programs are grounded in something that is true to the natural world. Like there's a relationship between the technology and something exists in what we call nature that may be some previous completely different sort of technology, right? But there's this, once you are sort of part of, I don't know if some people might refer to it as a network. I refer to it as like layer of the cake or layer of reality or frequency dimension of whatever it is. Then you are constantly sort of knowingly or unknowingly like finding yourself attracted to things that are also part of that, right? Does that make sense? So now for me, like the Oracle thing is interesting because I'm super into tennis, right? And Larry Ellison also is super into tennis. In fact, he owns the tennis tournament that I've been to the most amount of times in Indian Wells. He owns the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. He bought it. He owns that tournament, right? He bought it after I was already interested in it. But when you go in there, right? I remember the first time I saw this, there's a sign that says that basically we're going to take everything off of your phone when you come in here, right? So my correlation with that pre-exists that. But whatever they're doing now with people's phones was something they had done previously with people's bodies, right? All of the technology that is based on the thing that we think of as little devices or little machines or whatever, like they are copies of us and the earth or the universe. And they're seeking out efficient efficient ways of replicating something over and over at man's behest, at man's control, right? That kind of thing that otherwise seemingly had a mystical or an unknowable thing that was in charge of it. And that thing isn't really mystical and unknowable. It's just different than when a little man in an office is pushing a button and making it happen, right?
They want to make the material version of the esoteric.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. So for me, and you know, this is like where I've come to in a lot of this, those of us who found ourselves in certain circumstances in life, and this is maybe where, like you said something earlier about the purpose of the MK Ultra was to sort of break your will, right? And then control. You said something that it was a back in the conversation, so I don't remember the exact words you said, right? But you said something like every once in a while you have a vision of something or that isn't psychic, but it's like it's an ability, it's something that you have based on what they did to you, right? And in my opinion, and this is just where I'm at, doesn't mean it's the truth, is that that's something you always had, but they commandeered it and convinced you that you had it because of them, right? And so they were seeking people out who have a natural propensity for something, and then trying to commandeer that and also convince them that any benefit that skill has came from them doing it to you, right? And so it's also a way of divorcing you from your own right use of that skill or will or whatever it is, right? So I think they have figured out what it is about certain people that enables certain processing of information or certain expansion of types of energies or certain interesting relationships with light or sound. And then they try and figure out what that is and dose other people with that. See if they can take someone who does not naturally do that and not only get them to do that, but get them to do that only at will. Right?
Yeah, through BCI, right.
Only, right. And so this, what you're talking about now with the ASN or the Sabrina Wallace calls like the W band. What was interesting to me, I haven't watched the Sabrina Wallace videos, but I'm familiar with the content. Like I read a certain article that broke down what she's talking about. And it was funny because I'd never heard of this person. And then all of a sudden, like 30 people in 1 week were sending me this, you have to look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I'm like, this is old news. Like this is stuff that you and I have been talking about for a very long time. And it's like weird to me when it becomes like spigoted like that, where it's like all of a sudden people are bombarding me with one person talking about phenomena that lots of people have talked about in different ways over the years. And to me, it's like, okay, it's systems ready for people to start understanding this in a specific way, right? And so that's why the faucet has been turned on in this one way now, and then people can make whatever they want of it. They can believe her, not believe her, not like her, whatever it is, right? But I was like, there was nothing in this story that felt new to me. And I think but your assessment of what people sort of are, right, is like exactly, I wouldn't necessarily like, we think of nodes, we give it a connotation of like a cellular phone network system or internet hubbing that were nodes and all of that. But that has all been created based on this phenomena that they became aware of that happens between certain people who are connected based on something inside of them, right? So we're living in this like technological like inversion, right? But the thing that it's based on is something that is, predates that and is magnificent on some level, right? So I try and balance like how I look at all of that kind of stuff. But we have these energy fields in everybody's body. You were talking about DNA, how good it is for storage, right? And I've gone on about this for years and whatnot, but also each of us are made up of slightly different stuff. Like humans are like mostly the same as other humans in terms of what they're made of. But if you were to take samples of my blood or my genes or whatever, we're going to find lots of different traces of things, right? And that accounts for a lot of our differences, but even maybe the way we process light or sound or information, and makes us technically a different machine from one another, right? And these are the sort of, I think this is what so much esoteric or ancient wisdom was about, and this is what sort of like bloodline and arranged marriage and all of these kinds of things were that became secreted. They became, secret, sometimes for malevolent reasons, sometimes for just to safeguard or protect things. And then we're seeing this sort of technologification and commercialization and weaponization of that which used to be an alchemical process-oriented thing into now a programmed artificial intelligent technological programmed type of thing, right?
Well,
It is what you're saying. It's fascinating though. Yeah.
Well, and my point of bringing this forward and talking about people like what Sabrina is saying, first of all, most people have no idea what this is, none whatsoever. They really don't know. And my point of bringing it is that it's crucial to a level that I can't even express now, that people understand this technology exists. So you're not all psychic and clairvoyant. You're hooked into an AI system, and they're giving you the so-called abilities. I mean, I saw this with the Super Soldier program.
Yep.
All these under 30 people showed up, and they were all psychic.
Right.
Like it flooded the internet, and it's like, hello, you're hooked, you're BCI, man. They're sending this, and I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I know how fast it happens. You can be a psychic. Somebody asks you a question, you have the answer.
Right.
I've experienced this years ago. So my thing about this is I agree with you. The problem is people aren't differentiating. They don't have the,
100%.
critical thinking to discern whether this is something. And the reason I say they did this to me, I've already thought deeply, pondered and researched me coming in and who I might have been, or not so much who as what I was when I came in. And I'll take it to another level through my spiritual esoteric practice, that some of these left-hand path Black magicians actually know who's coming before they come.
Yeah.
They have abilities in a very occult way, which I won't go into, to know who's coming in. And those souls are targeted right from the get-go because they want to control that. Or the other side of that is they want to halt what that person is coming to do that will benefit humanity. And I always mention Caspar Hauser because that's a very classic example of one of those individuals that they grabbed right from the beginning and held for 16 years. But they couldn't quash what was there. The being that came in there after it was released, everybody saw it, everybody noticed it, so they finally murdered him, because it's like, and the problem with this is people would say to me, well, why don't they just kill him? And the reason is because if you kill a child will turn right around and incarnate again. They can incarnate very, very quickly. So the left-hand path knows that you have to subdue them and contain them. Now think about mind control and the various technologies, and even the old MK Ultra, and what they've done with certain people is to contain it and control it. Because if you just try to eliminate it, it's just going to turn right around and come back if it's intended to be here. So I absolutely agree with you. But my issue, and this to me is a huge societal issue right now, is that people do not understand this, that there is a completely working technical version that is controlling people. And then there's the possible, which I don't think is near as common as the the technical version, the true clairvoyant. I think they're quite rare. I mean, I'm talking about people like Madame Blavatsky, and who really was super high on this level, and she had to be taken down, honestly. And the left-hand path took her down. That was her fate. So this is why I think it's so important that the research information comes out. We're in an age where we're still educating through material means. That may change down the road. I believe it will. It will be, we'll have abilities and occult abilities that will return, and we'll change things that way. But for now, it's a matter of educating people. If people don't understand these technologies, and you and I meet people every day, they don't even know they exist. They don't even know that there's mind control. They don't even know. So if they start being
I'm just thinking of a recent interview. Danny showed me this little clip of Roseanne Barr calling Bill Maher MK Ultra to his face, and him being like, "What's that?" Right? Like,
you gotta love Roseanne Barr, right? Man. She's
so real quick. When I
so this is happening on I mean, people don't know the scale at which this is being perpetrated on individuals, and they don't know about this. So for me, somebody like Sabrina coming out whether, I don't care if they're letting her come out, or I don't
Right,
care.
right, right.
I
I don't
don't
care.
care about
Yeah.
that with anybody. If you've got information that I need to know and to help disseminate, I'm on it. If you don't, I don't want to, I don't want to hear about it. But to me, she's bringing a piece that's really crucial for people to understand that this has been going on for a long time, that the
Yeah.
technologies are very developed. And there aren't a lot of people really giving the fact. In other words, she was in it. She was brilliant, and she's brilliant. She was working in this. That's what she came into through her family. So it's somebody bringing it forward that
Oh
not
yeah.
only understands it but developed it, that worked in it, that can explain it down to the
Yeah.
minute, the minute detail. And I believe that is where the consciousness of humanity is. That's what we need. We're not clairvoyant. We're not, initiated occultists yet. That's our future. I mean, that's coming. We're going back to that, but as individuals this time. The prior version was in the group soul. And that's what I understand. We had to individualize where we're completely in separation. We're all unique, right? We're all, I mean, that's, you're separated by gender, by race, by nation, by religion, by whatever you believe. We are in the ultimate separation, which is important for our individual to develop.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go back and start uniting again, not in a group soul, in individual souls. And I believe I absolutely know we will move into a whole different way of being with one another and reunite in a way that is fantastic. But right now,
People need to understand like what is happening and how it works for sure. And that, yeah, like to me, that's the whole, like, I've definitely taken the position of stepping back from thinking something is good or bad, or I like it or I don't like it, because when I sort of pick one side or the other, I'm now like less able to see clearly what it is and how it works. So yeah, I agree. I just want to say something real fast about this Casper Hauser person, right?
yes.
I'm having this weird experience with this where the name didn't really ring a bell. I didn't really think you and I have talked about him before, but there is one thing in his bio that I feel like I'm having deja vu about, right? I'm going to look further at this because this looks like an interesting person that reminds me of some other people I've looked into. But
well, and I don't know how valid Wikipedia is, but I'll tell you
right.
there are two books out. Both are written by people who have because this is brought out through anthroposophy, his story. One is Terry Boardman. I own that book. I read that book. It's fascinating. And then there was a guy prior to him, Trudowski, I think his name is, who wrote a book also on Caspar Hauser. And as far as I know, that was from an anthroposophical view. But it's an absolutely, I mean, he's a classic example. And I do think he was very unique in what he was that came here and incarnated in that body. But I believe this happens quite a lot.
So
where somebody is coming, a special being is coming from that super sensible world to infuse humanity and help create the righteous, or I know that's kind of a weird word, but the proper evolution of humanity forward. And the left-hand paths are halting this. In a lot of these individuals, they're grabbing them up because of a practice that I won't go into, that I'm very familiar with and believe I was actually a part of in my use in my MK Ultra years, of in the kill programming, setting some of those up for them without me knowing in that altar that that's what I was doing. But I've learned that in the aftermath. So, but it's a fascinating story. And what's really fascinating is that once he was out, once he was released, what happened then? Because they did it's the most unimaginable things. They halted, they understand the esoteric version of a child growing, of them being able to stand and what that means in their whole spirit and soul. The course of evolution from an esoteric version, the course of growing up from a child into adult, and they halted all of them. They knew the esoteric version of, you don't let him stand up ever. He couldn't stand up as a child. He was in a small space because they knew the development process. and they were trying to stop the entire development. And when they released him, they had no idea that what was living inside him was what had evolved. It had come down and it had evolved beyond the typical humanness, and it took over. And everybody around him started to notice that he wasn't the same as everybody else, that he was very unique and special, and he remained childlike, which was really interesting because of the way he was brought in, but it was also because of this being that had come into the body. So what his story, not only his story, makes me think of is how often throughout our course of epics has this come in successfully, and how often has it been halted from this other side.
I'm going to have to dig in. I mean, I know I don't rely on Wikipedia, but you can, if you know how to read between the lines, you can glean things.
Oh, I'm sure there's
some good stuff. Reminds me of someone else that I've looked into, and I look at this and think about it a little longer. But the first thing that jumps out to me is that there's this reference to the House of Baden, and it makes me think of. Are you familiar with Michael Baden? You know who Michael Baden is, don't you?
No. Is somebody, you mean current? Somebody contemporary?
Yeah, he's the famous, like, what do they call the people who examine the body after someone? Not a coroner, but the pathologist. What's his name? Michael Baden.
Pathologist?
No, yeah, it's a pathologist. So it's this guy right here, right? Okay. He's a forensic pathologist, right? And he became really, really famous during the O.J. Simpson thing. Oh. But he is one of these people who, like, whenever there's one of these stories that don't quite make sense, he's called in as the person to testify, or the forensic pathologist. So that was the first thing that caught my eye about this, because of what you're talking about. So I'm gonna look at that. Maybe you
just really brief. He was to be in a position of ruling, and he was halted from that because the other family wanted their son to rule, and this was part of being influenced to change history, to halt what he would have acquired, what he would have done in his lifetime. And of course, a lot of that is speculation, but knowing what he was and when he came in, some of these books are fascinating. Like Terry Boardman is fascinating because he's giving you the whole history prior to Caspar, during his lifetime, and what took place after they killed him. Okay. You know, so in other words, the difference, and it has everything to do with the House of Baden.
Okay, so I'm curious about this now. Well, it wasn't the plan, but we have given everybody a sample of what all of our other conversations are like. So if you're not frightened off by that, or if you enjoy that, there's probably plus over 100 hours of Elisa and I going down these rabbit holes. But to take things back to what we're talking about here, right, which is the United Intentions, and I was under, like, so is United Intentions, explain the difference, what is the Operation Freeing Minds and Hearts?
So Operation, it's UI, Freeing Hearts and Minds Relief Fund.
Gotcha.
And our website is unitedintentions.org.
Okay, I have more questions. I just wanted to make sure that they were the same thing. Okay, so quick, like, I want to just get back to this, and then we can chat about a few more things. What, like, you know, so what are the, when you're cutting people checks, when people are requesting funds, what is the intention that the funds are for? Like, what are these funds going for? Like, how are you, what is the plan as to how you're going to help these people? Just so that people have an idea what they would be sort of donating to, what that would look like, how it would play out, etc.
So right now we can't give as much as we'd like. It's not a life-changing amount by any means, and it even in the end probably won't be life-changing, but we would like to double what we're giving right now, to actually assist something in their life, whether that's a month's rent, the car broke down, I need snow tires, you know, something, an amount that can actually assist. And any amount, I can speak to this as a person who's been homeless off and on, any amount is great. You're grateful to receive it. You know, it makes a difference in your life. We discussed early on, Tim and I, and felt that we both believe this. We don't tell them what to do with it. Mm-hmm. The reason we feel that's very important is you're talking about people who have been controlled, most likely interfered with and controlled most of their life. Part of the healing process for me was to start making my own decisions, whether that was risky decisions or not, doing the right thing, not doing the right thing, learning from that. So it's very important for us that we're sending them the money and letting them choose what to do with it. Now that may, some donors don't want that. They want to be able to control what's done with it. We will probably eventually alter on the website where we might put like buckets where people, dentistry, physical health care, therapy, and we may do that to let people choose in their donations. But right now we're just asking, we need to start up and we need people to just donate and let us hand it out as needs to be right now. Some of these people, I want to say it this way, when you're homeless, and I can say this from experience, the dentist is not on the top of the list.
Yeah.
Therapy is not on the top of the list. What's on the top of the list is I'm homeless. I need gas in my car. If you're lucky enough to have a car, I have to pay my car insurance. I have to buy food. I'm trying to go indoors once in a while. You have to understand that some of these people are living at the most basic of needs, absolutely bare bones. So we will eventually implement that where the donor can choose where they want to put it, and then we can give it accordingly. But right now, we're just looking at what we're getting is so much homelessness or on the verge of homelessness. And I don't know if people realize this, but during COVID, a lot of the rent went up 100%. I'm hearing this from people who aren't anything to do with mind control. I hear conversations in different communities, how rents have doubled. So a lot of the people that were secure are now on their way out to not be secure. And this is going to become a very chronic problem, I believe, beyond mind control. But right now we're dealing in the mind control arena. And you've got people on the run who need a little bit of money to feel safe to keep going. It's not your typical situation where there's a person who has a home and a job and they have maybe a health issue and they need help with that, several $1,000s to get care. This in a lot of cases is bare bones material.
Right. So at this point, so basically it's kind of more like a mutual aid, like people like just sort of helping to meet a need sort of at that moment. A couple of things, just in the way you described it, a few things come up, right? The way you described, like for right now, it's just helping people get to the next day or the next place or the whatever it is. But in the future, like having differentiated buckets and whatever. This is kind of an idea that I think about sometimes. We're stuck in this situation right now of governance that I don't believe in, right? And for me, it's like I'm voluntarist. I don't want any of it. But until we get to that far off place one day, I'm like, it would be interesting if we experimented with a system in which people got to decide what their tax money was to be used for. Not that they're not going to pay it, but you get to decide what it's paid for. And if nobody wants to contribute to the war in Ukraine or the war in Israel or whatever, then the people who want that are going to have to pay for that, and no one else's is. And the people who only want their tax money to go towards helping kids that are disadvantaged, whatever. So the idea, I think that's a good idea going forward, right? Because some people do want their investment directed in a certain way. And then others are more like, I'll help you with whatever you need, right? Like kind of thing. It's, and that I like that you guys are kind of playing with both ideas there, but also I recognize, and this is something that I want to say, and I've always appreciated you for this, is I completely recognize that I'm really fortunate and very rare amongst people who've had some of the kind of experiences that I'm talking about or that you're talking about, in that I have always had financial support and means from my family and from also other people willing to help me. The other people who helped me, it wasn't so much financially, it was just they were willing to give their time, their expertise, or whatever to me to help me try to sort things out. But that really, like, the difference between myself and a lot of these other homeless people is that I had means, and then I had people who I could trust, who were willing to listen to me and to help me. And a lot of people tried to help me, and I rejected it, refused it, wasted it, all of that kind of stuff too, which is also, a sign of my cup runneth over, that I was able to refuse help from people, even who, kind of thing. And I was talking to someone who's been a long time listener and often supporter of mine earlier this morning. And, we were talking about that YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's basically a guy who used to work in advertising, who couldn't do it anymore and decided to take his skills because he was into photography and graphics for marketing and advertising, decided to use his skills to shine a light on people and their stories. And his studio was on Skid Row, and he would just get people off of the street to come in, and he would talk to them about their life experiences. Right. And so she was a fan of this channel, and many months ago had asked me to take a look at it. And I didn't then, but at a certain point I did. And it was kind of fascinating, some of the things that I sort of found, and I had my own little synchronistic experience with it. But from looking at those, it became clear to me, right, that the only difference between me and some of those people is that throughout my life, I had support and means. And that really does make a difference between whether someone becomes the person babbling to themselves on the corner that, you feel like scared to go near, and that you definitely don't want to become, and someone sitting here talking about kind of the same things, if you go listen to what they're saying on this box, and I'm able to have a full range of experiences in life as a human being, is that I had love and support, right? And that's pretty much it, right? Like, I don't know if I would ever have been crazy, because I wasn't exposed to the elements in that way. I didn't, and so just having, not everyone, I recognize lots of people with lots of similar life experiences that I have somehow offended their family by speaking about them, so they no longer have that support, or they came from a different set of circumstances than I did, and that something like this can be really, really helpful to someone who doesn't have that. And I'm thankful that I never had to rely so much on the kindness of strangers. Most of my support came from, people that I either already knew or came across in my regular life as it is. But if it hadn't been for that, I don't know what I would have done. And so, I'm happy to support you in the endeavor with Tim here. I know you guys have a network of people, the practitioners and stuff like that to help. And I'm part of that list, even though I recognize that at this point, my viewpoint on things and the way I go about it is very different than a lot of people sort of in this space. But the normal people who could help people supposedly like me when I was in my difficult times, those people didn't work for me. I had to find someone who was a little bit different, who was willing to sort of take a different tact or look at different things from a different angle or whatever. So I appreciate that you are that to be included in this, right? And that there's probably somewhere out there someone who could benefit from a mind like mine, or my perspective in a way that most of the other people in your program couldn't or whatnot, and happy to be able to help where I can, but
absolutely. No, we're very grateful to have I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5 practitioners that range from where you come from to Bride Ministries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, it's the full gamut of choices. And the reason that Tim and I both agree with this, irrelevant of regardless, I should say, of our own personal paths. Tim and I aren't this on the same path, but we share a common, like you and I share commonality. He and I do as well. But we feel that this is really important. I do from the perspective of a karmic path that people need to choose based on where they need to go. And also just the freedom as a victim to make your own choices, stumble and fall, get up again and go, figure it out as you go. That's a very important part of healing, as you know. Being able to make your own choices is a huge part. And, I want to, there was something I was going to say about what came up really strong about what you're talking about. Oh, the gamut of victims. There are victims that come from wealthy families and still have loads of money access to. And then there's the complete opposite, which I fell into the category. I've been fortunate in my version of homelessness. It hasn't been near as severe. I don't know what I'd do if I was on the street. I don't know that I would survive. But I haven't gotten to that level. I've always had a car that I could make into a makeshift home as needed and sleep in. But people don't think about it. There are people, their families are the perpetrators.
Yep.
They're on the run from their families. They don't get inheritance. You're written out of everything. You are an outcast. And in some cases, believe it or not, the family is trying to kill these people. I have several victims on that list that are on the run from their very own family.
Yeah.
So,
it's true.
It's a very, you're right. It's a broad spectrum. And so what I'm asking and Tim and I trying to create this website is it's an education piece as well as for survivors. It's an education piece for the donors and the people that come to visit. We want to educate people, not only provide for the survivors, but people to understand what this looks like. And I'm down here. I'm homeless. I'm leaving this place on Friday and I'm going to a 2-week house sit in Taos. And after that, I don't know where I'm going to be. I'm going to try to actually get a place. I might be able to handle that this time. It's time to stop running around. I mean, it's been roaming. It's been wonderful, but I'm getting tired of doing this. And it's about, again, talking about rents. It's about coming up with first, last security and then maintaining it. That is the issue, which for a lot of homeless people, that's the issue. You can't get in. And then once you get in, depending on the rent, you may not be able to maintain it. That situation may be changing for me. But what I wanted to say was that, I lost my train of thought. That's what I want to say. I was on a thing there, back to you talking about the gamut. Is trying to get people who come visit the site to really understand what this is, how this looks in real time. I'm down here. I go into town. I'm outside of town. I'm out in the desert, which is fabulous. But I go into town often, and there are homeless on every corner. There's one guy that sleeps on a narrow median. He just lays down and goes to sleep. I mean, there's cars flying all around him. And every once in a while, I see someone that is physically disabled, that's older, and I'm handing them some of my money. It's not a lot, but I can relate to that fine line. Not like you. My line has always been when I'm sitting in my car and I'm looking at a homeless person, I know how close I am to that over the years. And now that I've taken back a lot of the soul forces, I feel this sense of sovereignty. Things are starting to shift a little bit. I know that my future is changing. What I'm moving into is changing. But I've always known how close I was between where I was and them. So I've felt very connected all these years. And I, like you, I believe that a lot of the homeless are remote technology victims. And this has come not just through me, but others of us that have talked about this and engaged the homeless. We see the similarity of the symptoms for them and the people that know that they're under mind control technologies. So it's broad
crazy
issue.
how many, like, one of the things that this person this morning and I were talking about, how like the Mark Laita or Laisha, I don't know how you say his name, the soft white underbelly guy, his project is basically he just asks them very few questions and lets them tell their story. But like many of them are people who've been like on the streets, drug addicts, homeless for their entire life. They definitely are not sitting at home like reading white papers on the internet like you or I. But she said the crossover between projects or MK Ultra and then what he's doing, which is really looking at like drug addiction and homelessness and all this kind of stuff. It's uncanny, right? He lets everyone tell their story. He's very mainstream, so he doesn't really ask any questions you or I would ask. But these people who like have $2, so they're not scraping the internet for patents and white papers like you or I. The experiences that they're talking about 100% line up to the things that people who are on the internet talking about their targeting or their MK Ultra or the patents or whatever it is, right? And so there's a consistency of experience that is like that goes. There's no way that, and I talk about this when people try to discount the experiences people have on drugs as well too. People from completely different realities, different backgrounds, different places they grew up, different things they like, different things they don't like, their fears, their likes, all that kind of stuff. There's no way that people that are this different, so many of them describe like the same kind of beings or things that look the same or certain locations or whatever, that it's that even across, unless somehow that is a real place or a real frequency band that is populated by a certain like consistent kind of experience, right? It objectively exists. It may be explained from a subjective perspective, but like there's just no way that someone that you don't like, don't know, don't care about, and have nothing in common with will describe.
They're just crazy, right?
Well, right. But it's like if someone I don't like or don't know or have never met before describes the pizza place on the corner, it's because it exists and we've both been there, right? And this is something that's a little bit more
absolutely
slippery, right? But the way that they're describing it is almost exactly the same as the way we would describe the pizza place on the corner. And so this is something like that is undeniable. And you probably would really like the Soft White Underbelly channel. And there's a lot of, you'll resonate with a lot, like with a lot of it. And in some ways it's kind of like a similar thing. Like when you let people tell their stories, these are probably going to be pretty, I'm hoping that they're disparate. I'm hoping it's not, just that, people that come on are the ones who sort of conform to the traditional understanding. That wide gamut there, like I think, and then you start to like let go a little bit about the narrative or the feelings someone has about their experience and start to listen to like the few main factors. And then you're really onto something. Then you understand sort of, where the scaffolding or the joists in this structure really are. So I look forward to seeing what comes forward here.
And the other part is how they're dealing with it is very varied. Some people have come up with, we're getting ready to interview tomorrow. Tim is. I'm just going to listen in. He's got two people from one's from California, and he started the Havana syndrome. He's been targeted for 23 years, but he's claiming he came up with a system to remove the psychological torture. Now it's just physical.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he's found a way to block or cancel out the psychological stuff, and he says now he's dealing with the physical, which is still horrific, but you don't hear that every day, that, so it's not only their experience being different, but how people are learning to overcome or cope or, to give ideas to others. And so we made it MK Ultra SRA targeted individuals. We figured that kind of covers the whole gamut of the official terminology in mind control. But what falls within that category isn't always the same. One of the first people that reached out to me in her form said, I'm being, and I quote, remotely SRA'd, end quote. So now she's getting remote technologies that are mimicking satanic ritual abuse. And it's just like, you never know what you're going to hear from someone. And when I do engage on foot the homeless, like when I'm at a store and there's somebody there and I give to them, what I'll do is very gently ask them, do you mind if I ask you how you wound up here? And I've been amazed at some of the conversations. And I mean, they'll just talk for 20 minutes sometimes because nobody's listening to them, you know, and sometimes it's a very seemingly normal situation. You know, I had an accident, I lost my job, blah, blah, blah. But other times, some of the things that comes out of their mouth, you know what they're dealing with. And I've had a friend who up in Washington years ago sat down on a bench next to a homeless person. And she said she could understand what the V2K was making this person say to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was literally she could tell that it was coming from a remote technology through the mind and mouth of this person being delivered to her.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just never know what you're
Have
going to
you
find.
seen any of the Look Out for Charlie videos
Not
where
late. I
where
used to.
okay, so a couple months back he was showing a thing where it was like the there was like something in the thing that happened in Hawaii and then something that happened in Congress where like a person like standing behind or off to the side of the person on camera would mouth the thing like just a half a second before the person on the camera would actually say something. Right
Oh
now,
wow.
in sure, like there's the possibility that there could be a screen or a teleprompter or whatever it is, but you would like we've not seen this before with the person mouthing it. And when you think when you think that your conversation you're having in your own head, right, when you this is a difference between if something was just happening in your own head and when it's externally thing is you might not be able to control actually moving your lips and saying it, right? We haven't seen this in Congress and with the news, the spokesholes on the news forever, right? It was just like suddenly there's all of these ventriloquists behind people that are being filmed, right? And he was kind of
Wow.
showing the timing of like there'd be a noise in the background and then that would happen, right? It was almost,
Oh my
you know,
gosh. Yeah. It's
right? And
insane. It's getting crazy out there. It
but
really is. I mean,
but
what to trust?
even like let's just look at this from two angles. There could be a technology that's causing that to happen, or we're living in a reality that is so scripted, right? That like, you know, I have one friend that I interview a lot who like his whole thing is illusion warfare and this is just all a theater and a stage and like everything is just completely controlled from like a stage production value thing, right? Either one is equally disturbing. If someone is being remotely like massaged into saying something, or like someone who's like out in the wildfires in Hawaii has like a teleprompter screen behind them trying to tell them what to say, either way it's like what the fuck is going on here, right? So but yeah, that the ventriloquist, because it's like they're doing it out of their mouth like this, right? Like it's bizarre. It's really weird.
Well, and someone recently said, I don't know who it was, but it came through a friend that, you know, we look at newscasters on mainstream media, right? We say, oh, well, that person's and this person said they are all MK Ultra. There's not a one of them on mainstream. And you know, when you look at that and you think about that all the mainstream newscasters are MK Ultra.
Yeah,
Think about what that implies in our society. You
right.
know, I mean, whether it's 100% or 90%, it's still very symptomatic of what's going on. And I want to share one quick thing about the
Yeah,
the spiritual side of an experience I had with a homeless person in Taos she's notorious and she goes into screaming obscenities when she's not medicated. And, you know, she has some very unusual physical movements. And then when she's medicated, I've seen her sitting down having normal conversations with people. One day I had some things that I was offering to a friend I met for coffee, and this woman was sitting down the way on a bench. And my friend said, we both knew who this woman was. She said, why don't you offer it to her? And I looked at her and I go, okay. And as I walked up to her, she started screaming at me, get away, leave me alone. I mean, at the top of her lungs, shrill. And I walked up and I kept a little distance. And as I was getting closer to her, I was praying under my breath. And the octave of what she was screaming kept getting lower and lower until it went to leave me alone.
Yeah.
It completely brought it down. And I won't
Mm-hmm.
talk about what I was praying. It was something very specific. And I turned and walked away. And my friend said, what just happened? And I told her, that, so there is, I mean, even if I'm not a religious person, I'm not in any religion, I'm more of an esoteric Christian, I would call kind of an occult version. But whatever you believe, when you do that in whatever belief system, you're bringing an entirely different energy into the situation. That's what I see it as, is I
Well,
have a very,
you can manipulate energy fields too, my friend.
and I looked at it, of course, as, I mean, there's no question to me that there's a being that runs this woman now because of what she's been exposed to. Pharmaceuticals, big time, the medical industry, the mental health industry, that there is a being attached to her. And that's what I was talking to. I wasn't really talking to her. I knew it when I walked up that I'm attempting to subdue this being for her sake, and it was a very temporary thing, and I'm sure she's right back to, to whatever, but she's a victim. She's a victim of our systems.
Yeah.
And that's why she's in the condition she's in. But it was pretty cool for me, because I had never done that before, to see the effect it had, even though it's just temporary. So, and it doesn't, I'm saying it's not relegated to my particular way
no.
of
I think
viewing
we've
the
all.
world.
I mean,
It's what we're bringing in, which to me is what our future is. We're going to help one another. We're going to help those, and this to me is the beginning of it. We're going to help those that are under the curse of evil, and I mean that in a very material sense and a very esoteric sense, occulted sense, both. Meaning, those of us as we go forward who develop that true sense of brotherhood, which is in Rudolf Steiner's interpretation is, I love this, it used to make me weep every time I read it, is that there will come a time when someone is unhappy, nobody will be able to be happy. Mm-hmm. In other words, we live in a time now where it's very possible in our conscious state to be happy in life, regardless of who's suffering.
Right.
And that will change, where it won't even work in our constitution when we encounter unhappiness. And sounds like a light term, but in other words, when someone is struggling and unhappy, we will not be able to be happy until we assist them into being in a better place. And that to me is a reality of what can come.
It is weird, and this is going to sound like an aside, and we're going to wrap up in just a minute. So I don't want to get into all the like nitty gritty geopolitical, this, that, or the other thing. But I feel like there's something about this iteration of the Israel-Palestine scenario that is serving as an opening to what you're talking about here, because I know people who have never paid attention to the plight of other people on the other side of the world before, right? Something about this one strikes a specific kind of nerve, and you see that in the overreactions of the political, establishment to certain things, and the strange testimonies we're hearing in Congress, that this strikes the specific nerve, and it's going to be weaponized and shit showed first. But there's people who have never thought about unfair things happening to other people on the other side of the world before in any way other than like a statistic on the news, that they're starting to pay attention to and starting to care about, even though they can't yet tell you why they care about it. And I think that, right, like it is interesting. It's that kind of
impetus.
But it's an opening to what you're talking about, where it's like, I hear people who normally don't give a shit about anything, like unable to get through their day without thinking about what's going on over there. Now, whether what's going on over there is anything remotely like what they say is going on over there or not is kind of not the issue. But like, to have young kids, like, this is not, whatever this is not fake in the same way that the panicking about the climate like Greta Thunberg does, or the panicking about a virus. Like, there's something about this that strikes at the like heart of the nature of humanity, that seems to be getting getting into people in a way that hasn't before. I don't know how this is going to play out or whatever it is, but what you described, I think this is an external moment of sort of like validation of that thing that still seems really far away, but but is happening. Yeah.
And this is what I like to say to somebody is, the greater the depth of the evil perpetration, in other words, when we see things that are inhumane happening, the irony or not of it is that affords a greater reach, a higher reach into goodness. So in other words, as we cycle down, the deeper we go, byproduct is a higher level of good. It
grows an opposite reaction.
higher,
yeah.
Rather than everything's hunky-dory and we can just stay here.
Stay in that middle band. Yeah.
This goes down and we get to go even higher in our choice of what's good and right. Our morality.
Yeah.
Higher.
All right. One more time for people as we wrap this up, where can they go just to learn more about what you talked about today, to hear the testimonies, to help if they want to, all that jazz?
UnitedIntentions.org will take you to the site for UI Freeing Hearts and Minds Relief Fund. And then uimedianetwork.com is where the MK Ultra shows are, but you can get to that on the United Intentions site. It'll have a tab that says MK Ultra shows, and it'll take you right over to those. And so go to unitedintentions.org and check out the various pages. And if you wish to donate, there's a page for you there. If you want to reach out to us and interact with us or request funding, there's a page for survivors. We're getting a list, and I can put you on the list. And as soon as the funds come in, we'll get to you on that. Check out the mind control patents, people. You will be stunned. 7 pages of mind control patents when this was put together. There may be more than that now, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll include all the links in the description. And there's an entire history of our MK Ultra type of shows, many of them available publicly on the Randy Moggins Off Planet TV channel or on my channel on YouTube, Emily Moyer. And then we also have a more recent supporter series called Cenote that we've been doing that is really going through using Elisa's experiences as sort of the scaffolding, and then sort of having a multi-dimensional analysis or perspective look about it. And if you would like to check those out, there's a passcode to come in and be able to check that out for free. And then if you enjoy those, you can stick around and become a listener and a supporter or whatever. But there's hours and hours and hours of us doing this. So if you're interested in that is there.
Lots. Well, how many cenotes? We've got 10 cenotes.
We've got 10 cenotes. And then I think we have probably something like 8 or more deep ultras, and then other shows that you've done, with either myself or with Randy and I over the years. So we have to have probably somewhere between 25 and 30 shows total. And some of them are very lengthy, right? Some of them are very lengthy. So, and I think we're only on chapter 5 of your books. So there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, I think we'll pick it back up after the first of the year at some point. I got to get settled. And
also, Elisa, for those who are trying to figure out for themselves, maybe if anything that's gone on in their life resonates with any of what we're talking about here, Elisa's book, Our Life Beyond MK Ultra, which is available on Logo Sophia Books, which our friends
now. And I've just found out from a friend that my old books are being resold on like Amazon. So I don't get anything from book 1 and 2 being sold separately, just so you know. That's people who are and one of them's for $50 the other day. They've got one of my original books, but this is the new version, MK Ultra Then and Now. And this has both of those books in it, plus updates and color collages and so on. So
our friends Chris and Steve Crimmy published the book. And what I love about your book is it runs the gamut from the traditional versions of MK Ultra that people know about to some of the weirdest shit I've ever heard. and how strange the experience is when the strangest thing that's ever happened to me matches up with the strangest thing that's ever happened to you, and we never met each other before, and it's like really fucking weird. Then you really have something. So that's always an enlightening. It's weird how it can be like simultaneously disturbing and comforting to know that, like, right, because you were not, I was never going to say it out loud, and right, but then somebody else had, so it was like, okay. So you can engage in that experience as well, and that supports Elisa also. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for joining me, Elisa, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.